Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Okay. So, much like Mayor John, I didn't know exactly what the format was going to be, but my favorite thing to talk about is Harlingen. So every time I get an invite, I'm like, yes, sign me up. This is a little bit different because it's a little bit more about us, but I'm happy to talk about myself, but that's usually not my strongest subject. But I will share with you just a little bit about me. Some of you in the audience have heard me speak about my journey, and so this might be a little recycled, but for those of you that didn't, just give you a little insight to who I am. So I am, of course, the mayor of the city of Harlingen, which is definitely a all full-time consuming job, but I also am a mom, and I think my priority, of course, if I have to give a list of, what's my biggest hat, and it's being a mom. So a mom, I've got two boys, and I have a 13-year-old and a 22-year-old. And I know you're thinking, one was a mistake, but I promise you that's not what happened. It was with intention. Because along my journey, and I'm married, I always forget about my husband. People ask me, do you have a husband? I say, yes, I have an amazing husband. But the reason that I have two boys so spread apart is because I had this crazy idea that I could actually go to law school. And it's something that I wanted to do when I was a child. And I don't know about you, but I grew up in a Mexican household, and my dad would say, I want mucho. She's going to be a lawyer. She talks too much. And because of that, she's going to be a lawyer. So I always thought that I was going to be a lawyer, but nobody told me you had to pay to go, and that, it would be difficult and challenging. So, I went to school here, University of Texas at Brownsville, and I started teaching. And that's what I did. I taught for a number of years. I taught little kids. But like many of you, at that point in my life, I was already with that entrepreneur mindset. So I was teaching, and I was teaching all these little kids and all this energy. And, I taught pre-K was my first year. Don't do that. So I had crazy, these little kids, they would come in the morning and they would cry because they didn't want to be left at school, and they would tell their parents, please don't take me, don't leave me here. And then they would be done by noon, and then I would get another group at 1. They'd be crying, oh, please don't leave me. And so it gave me an insight into how children were full of energy and they needed something to entertain themselves with. So I said, I'm going to do something in my community that is going to fix that problem. So I got with a good friend of mine, and we decided that we were going to open up a business in Harlingen called Celebration Station. And we were going to open because we were going to fill the need for the kids that were having just this hard, difficult time in school, because they wanted to just have fun and play and have a safe space. And we didn't have something like that in Harlingen. So we said, we're going to do this. We tried to do a little business plan. I didn't know Angela back then, and if I did, I think I would be more successful. But I share this with you so that way not every idea is going to be an amazing idea. Not every business is going to be successful, but you will learn along the way. So what I learned was that if you have no money, you could probably make no money. That's what I first learned, because you had to buy inventory, and you had to buy, pay for permits and things like that. And you didn't have at a teacher's salary, and didn't have that. But for a whole year, I invested into this business, and I learned that I was filling a need, but I wasn't making a profit. And that's when you realize if you're not profitable and you don't see profits in the future, it's time to have some self-reflection. Think maybe this isn't the best route for me. And that's my first shot at opening a business. So it was really hard to say, okay, as much as I love this, I'm not making any money. I'm actually losing money by having this business. So I'm going to have to close my doors. And that was hard, because maybe I'm just going to teach my whole life. This is for me. And it's an honorable job. But I felt like that was not my path. That wasn't something that was going to be a long-term future for me. So then my husband got this crazy idea and said, I want to work on NASCAR cars. And back then, I don't even know when, I won't tell you because I'm aging myself. he wanted to go to some school because back then everybody would watch TV and they would show these advertisements that if you went to this school in Houston, you could work in NASCAR. And of course, we're all excited. Yeah, that'll be fun. No kids. Let's go to do that. And so I moved to Houston and started teaching over there. And I believe in opportunity. How many of you think that there's opportunity for everybody? Yes. And opportunity arises only when you're paying attention. And if you're not paying attention, you might lose that opportunity. And so I have always been very observant, looking for my next step, my next path. And so while I was at Houston and I was teaching, my co-teacher, she was young. She had living still back at home with her parents, and had this idea that she could go to law school. And I was, of course, her cheerleader. Yes, you can do this. It's great. I think you should. And get at it here. You don't need to be, working here. You have such a bright future ahead of you. And so I was her cheerleader. And she said, would you mind just studying with me? Because I don't have anybody to study with. And at that time, my 22-year-old was 1. So anything I could do to get out of the house, I was like, I'm there. So I started to study with her. And all I did was a couple of weekends at a coffee shop and studied. And then she said, okay, I think I'm ready. And I said, you know what, maybe I'll take this test with you. There's an LSAT, no big deal. Let's just, see how I do. If I do well, then at least I know that I can, maybe I'm good at analytical skills, or I can, read and comprehend well. I think I can do this. So I took the LSAT, and then I got a pretty good score. And I thought, do you think I could go to law school too? And at this time, my husband was working. It didn't work out. He didn't go to NASCAR, so he was a mechanic. That's a whole other story. So therapy's good, for those of you that are wondering. So we found ourselves in we were working, both of us were working full time. Paying daycare at that time was still expensive, still is today. And I sat down and I asked him, do you think this would be good for our family? I've always wanted to go to law school. Maybe this is my opportunity. How interesting is this setting up for me in this fashion? And so I said, okay, what if I just apply, and if I'm able to, and someone gives me a scholarship of some sort, so we can't afford it, then we'll go. Like, okay, we'll do that. We prayed about it. We said, okay, this is what we're going to do. So then, of course, that's what happened. I applied to all these schools. I remember I got accepted to St. Mary's. I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I want to go to San Antonio. I want to live there. It's great. I don't want to go back home, right? Kind of the same thing. But then they said, we'll give you $10,000. I was like, well, shoot, man, that's not enough for me to go to law school. Thank you. Might as well just shut the door on me, right? And so then it was similar. And then I wanted to go to U of H because I thought I could go to the they had like a part-time program. So you could work full-time, go to school. And they waitlisted me. And I thought, well, I felt like I was rejected. I'm not good enough. Of course I can't do this. What am I thinking? I'm in my 30s already. I'm going to go to law school. Of course they don't want me. I have nothing to offer. Got really down on myself.
See.
And then I got a letter in the mail from Thurgood Marshall School of Law, which a lot of people, TSU, a lot of lawyers down in the Valley, they give opportunity to people like me. Minorities, maybe taking a risk on someone. But they reached out to me, sent me a letter, and they said, if you come to our school, we will give you a full ride. You don't have to pay anything. The only thing is you have to be top 10% every year. If you don't make it, then you lose your scholarship. So I was like, man, I haven't been at school in a while. I don't know if I could do that. So I talked to my husband, and he said, yes, let's do this. This is a sign. We sat in front of the school in the car with my son, acting crazy. I said, are you sure we can do this? Because your first year in law school, you can't work. You're not supposed to work, right? If you do, you can risk not being able to finish, right? And it's one of their requirements. And so we made that decision together, and I went to law school, and I got a full scholarship. I didn't incur any additional debt. And it also taught me that I needed to do something to make money, even though I couldn't work. So what it did for me is I got back into the workforce and I worked as a server, as a bartender, all these things that people in my community now, that all the type of different roles that they have, I've done those. And I think it makes me more relatable to people. I understand. So if we go to a restaurant and the waitress or the server is having a hard time, I'm still tipping really well, because you never know what kind of day that they're having. Maybe that's Norma and she's stressed out. She's got a kid at home, right? And she's trying to go to school. You never know what everybody, what a person's journey is, or what battles that they've got going on. So I share all this with you to tell you that life is not linear. You may think that you're going to go one direction, but you may, God might take you somewhere else. And if you're paying attention, opportunity is going to be there. And if you take that opportunity to walk through that door, you'll be surprised on how well that you can do in a different career path. So if you are trying to invest in something right now, know that it might work out fantastic, or it might be a learning experience. But if you can draw something from each of those experiences, it'll make you a better person in the long run. And I think for me, it has helped me to have a better understanding of where people are coming from. Right now there's food insecurity throughout our community. I know Brownsville's doing an amazing job and has opportunities for their residents. Harlingen, we're working the same. But I think for me, that I hear people say, oh, well, these people, they're on food stamps and, they should go get a job and they should this and they should that. But I can draw on my own experience. My first year of law school, I had to humble myself because we were one paycheck. And I walked into the welfare office to get food stamps for me, my son, and my husband. Feel me emotional. But I share this with you because now I'm doing well. I've gone to law school. I have a practice. I'm mayor of the city, but I've been there where we're concerned, are we going to have money to put food on the table? And those experiences will make you a better person. Those experiences will help you relate to the people in your community. And it'll also make you just overall appreciative of the things that you have. Because I guarantee whatever it is that you're asking for today, you're going to attain that. And when you get to that place, you're going to be asking for more. And then when you get to that place, you're going to be asking for more. But the thing is, in order to have some type of perspective, is you got to be able to look back and say, I remember those days when I was asking for the things that I have today, and be appreciative of those things. And that'll make you a well-rounded individual and hopefully inspire others around you to dream big and to think that you too can do whatever it is that you want. There are opportunities. And of course, public service is also really, really important, but know also that I will be the first one to tell you that living and working, sometimes people work 40, 50, 60 hours. That was me when I first moved back home and I was a baby lawyer. I didn't have time to be on a board. I didn't have time to go to networking events. And so those things are important, but sometimes it might not be the season for you. And if it's not, don't feel bad about that. You got to do what you got to do. Don't overextend yourself, because if you do that, then you're not going to be good at anything when you're doing everything. But you will have a season when you can't give back. And as soon as that door opens for you, I encourage you to jump in and jump with your whole heart, because that's where it gets good, when you have that opportunity to be able to give back. And for me, being able to be here just in front of you and share and be a little vulnerable and tell you a little bit about myself, I think that this is a way for me to feel like at least I can reach somebody in the room that has doubts about what's going on in their life, or what investments next, or what opportunities that they're afraid to tackle. I think this is our way of being able to be that soundboard sometimes for somebody that said, hey, I tried this, it didn't work out. Well, guess what? It's okay. You move forward and you can do something different, and maybe that thing will work out. But I will say, those of you that want to be in public service, and John said, one more term and I'm done, me too. I am starting my second term, and then I hope to pass the baton to someone else, because it is hard work. And that person that runs, is in this position, has to be able to give 110%. And if you think that you cannot give 110% in a leadership role, an elected role, that the people have put you in that position, you shouldn't be in it. If you don't have that energy, you don't have that motivation, then you're doing a disservice to the community. So you got to be ready to take that. And I know that everybody that I work with throughout the region, I know that was an excellent question, but I will tell you something about Mayor John. He is a true leader. He is the president of or the chair of our South Texas Alliance of Cities. We are working together regionally like we have never done before here in the Rio Grande Valley. And it's because of leadership like Mayor John and the other mayors that we have within the region. So the Rio Grande Valley is on fire right now. Our future is bright. We're doing great things. I hope this was what was it supposed to talk about. There's a lot of opportunity also in Harlingen. I'd love to share anything that you have questions in regards to entrepreneurship and opportunities.
Being born and raised in Brownsville, I think like a lot of youth, I wanted to get out and see the world. I really didn't see myself coming back here. I went off to the University of Notre Dame, got a degree in finance. I graduated right after 9/11, so there were no jobs. And so I ended up moving to Chicago without a job, and I got into consulting. I worked for a Big Four institution called Deloitte, and that gave me a great insight into how to be a professional, how to deal with multinational corporations. I ended up moving to New York City and lived there for 2 years. So I got to see the world. I got engaged, started thinking about starting a family, and I'm like, I don't want to have a family in a big city where there's it's kind of chaotic, it's expensive. I was really drawn back to coming home, coming back home with family, to a community of a city that I know and I love, right? So I moved back up in 2007 to come work with my dad. My dad's built a business here. He was a serial entrepreneur. He was a man that took risks every day, and it really drove my mom crazy. But I think I learned a lot from him in the sense that you need to be bold, you need to be a dreamer, you need to have that faith that you can succeed, you have the skills, you have the network here to come together to accomplish your dreams. So he allowed me to learn that mentality, and being a businessman, he was involved primarily in the customs brokerage business, and he started back when NAFTA was created back in the early 90s, and was able to build a customs brokerage in Cali, one of the largest south in the region, right? And was one of the few U.S. customs brokers to learn the Mexican side, Mexican customs brokerage, which is a much different, more complicated, very high risk environment. And he said, you know what? I'm gonna be an expert at that as well. And he also decided to start a software company in Mexico that provided software solutions to the maquila industry. So he just kept on pushing the limit. He wasn't content with just being normal. He wanted to be different. He wanted to be the pacemaker, right? The trendsetter in the business. And so, that allowed me to really say, hey, how can we be more professional? How can we scale? And how can we use all the financial tools to really expand our profile around the beach? So fast forward, I would say we've probably tripled in size since I've been here. We're now 150 employees, and 100 on the US side, 50 on the Mexican side in our software business. And then we got into multifamily real estate, which again, I know nothing about. My dad knew nothing about, but he wasn't afraid of doing that, right? And he said, well, there's a need. We built the first Class A multifamily development here in Brownsville in over 20 years. And then other people weren't willing to do it, but my dad said, Brownsville needs it. There's demand. He has the intuition to do it, and was very successful, right? And so I think, that journey really put me in a position to have that mentality to be able to take risks, be empowered to take risks, but also put me in a position to be able to give back to my community, all right? And to say, hey, how can I take that mentality and apply that to city government, to our boards, our local institutions, right? And so in 2007, when I moved back, I was approached, to get involved. When I came home, I think serving in a board or in a public capacity was, I felt pretty, why me? Like I'm not anyone special, right? But it was very apparent when I started to get involved, like, hey, I could have an impact. When I was approached to serve on the Housing Authority board here, the Housing Authority at the time was at risk of being taken by the federal government, by HUD, because of lack of compliance, lack of leadership. And so I got into the Housing Authority along with some other like-minded people, and we were able to turn that organization around to be one of the highest performing in the United States. And so a lot of the work that we did back then, you're starting to see come to fruition now. The El Jardín Hotel being redeveloped by the Housing Authority, opening hopefully by the end of the year. That building was vacant for 40 years, right? It's one of our most historic and most visible structures here in Brownsville. That will be, this part of the story, the transformation of Brownsville, right? And not that I know anything about housing authorities, but I know what integrity means. I know what good leadership looks like. And I think that message, I think, is resounding along my journey. And by seeing how good leadership can impact institutions, it allowed me to have the confidence to continue my journey, to start getting involved at the economic development level at JUBIC afterwards. I was the only non-elected board member at JUBIC during a time of pretty great turnaround in Brownsville leadership, right? We had to dissolve the Brownsville Economic Development Council because of corruption issues, right? Those are hard times to build for Brownsville. I had a front row seat for that. But I think making those decisions, those hard decisions, allowed us to be in the position where we are today. We're the fastest growing city for job training, as an MSA with Harlingen in the state of Texas, right? Just never happened. And those, I don't think those things, takes a little time to get. And I think those, our success here, and I'm not taking any credit here, but I think it's an example where our good leadership matters, right? And people that are willing to take that business perspective, that risk management perspective, where you don't want to take too much risk, but take calculated risk, but that will pay off in the long run for everyone. So I think that's my message to you. It is, have faith in yourself, surround yourself with people that are going to support you along your career, and don't be afraid. Your community is here to support you. At the end of the day, we have built a culture of resiliency, of entrepreneurship, of people that support each other, and I think that's an amazing thing. And it's not just Brownsville; it's regional, right? You're seeing it across the valley. You're seeing the reflection of that in leadership at all levels, and it's probably the best time ever to be in the Lincoln Valley. I'm really proud to be involved at this stage. So I'm not sure about the format.
Let's give it up for Mayor Cowen. Now that's loud.